All right. The sound check is now complete. And now the easy task of everything else
Yeah.
we can think about. All right. So let's see. What are the goals today? Maybe an interesting thing to do would be to create a document to record some ideas.
Yeah.
Um,
Figure out what it is we're seeking out of this
yeah.
endeavor.
That's the right note, I think. As much as I don't want to make a Microsoft Word doc. What do I have access to? Is Gdocs free?
Yeah.
That's accessible to you, right?
It is. It is.
I'm not a Google dog.
Hit the drive.
Hit
Hit that new.
Big plus.
Yeah, Google Doc.
Let's make a folder. TB and JR pod. Okay, that was easy enough. No.
You love to hear that.
Well,
As the Googler.
yeah. I do have an active Microsoft 365 subscription.
That you're just avoiding.
We're just not paying for right now. Well, I know that you don't, so that's important.
Yeah. That sounds expensive.
Well, I got it with the okay. I'm almost certain that this keyboard will register on the microphone, but that's fine. The note that you had was declare what we want to get out of this. I'm seeing a lot of clicks and clacks there.
So the listeners will know that we didn't work.
There's going to be maybe one or two listeners here, and they're in this room right now.
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay. Another idea is to open the Google Doc and take notes on the phone, which would be much quieter. And you could participate at the same time.
Yeah, why don't you find a link and share that with me?
Okay. That seems easy enough. In the Google environment. I assume I can do this to your phone number? Or do I need an email address?
Well, you can.
Just copy and paste the link, I assume.
I mean, you could open up this doc to everyone.
Yeah, feel free to try.
Let's see. Anyone with the link, copy the link. But we want to make anyone an editor. Copy the link. How do I get this to somewhere else?
I just texted it to you.
Oh.
Yeah, the nice thing about having a Mac would be that you could just use iMessages, right? Just text it to someone. Yeah, that would be great. Untitled document.
Nice. We need to title this document.
Yeah, let's do that.
Shorter of action.
Close out of here. Yeah. Okay. And this speaks to one of our first questions to answer too, which is like, what's our code name for this whole project? What are we going to refer to this as?
The name of the podcast?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. Or just a placeholder even is sufficient for now. I've been calling this TB and JR pod. Like this is saved as, this is supposed to be in our TBJR pod 1.
Nice.
This audio file. I think that's a fine placeholder.
That's a great name for the podcast.
It doesn't get much
TB
more
and JR
descriptive.
pod.
Yeah, not a lot of imagination there.
Yeah. Well, you know what they say about people with podcasts, right? You'll know they have a podcast within a few words of meeting them. So they'll tell you about it.
I'm not telling anybody about it.
And having a name like TB and JR Pod really doesn't ring off the tongue, which I kind of like.
Okay, yeah.
I don't want it to be easily shareable.
Hey. That is a good thing. That's progress.
Yep.
These are important notes. Not easily shareable means something. What does it mean? That means... Fuck. No cussing on the podcast.
Yeah. You never
Come
know
on.
where we'll have to post these.
This is going to ruin my candidacy.
TB and JR.
Not easily shareable. Primary audience is TB and JR. What does that mean? That means seeking to learn.
Rename the document.
Primarily. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think that's a fair statement. That primarily one of my goals for this project, at least today, is I want to learn. I just want to have something that allows me to learn things that I may not be exposed to otherwise.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good North Star, I think, for the time being. In light of that, I did take a couple notes, just some ideas that came to me in the last day or two for kind of design ideas for how we could figure out what to talk about on any given time.
Okay.
Things that I noted. So first note was explain a concept. One or both of the participants bring a concept from their field or some interesting field and teach it to the other person. I think that could be fun and interesting and valuable. Sort of along those lines, and something that I'm leaning toward personally is like write and or discuss an essay or article or tweet thread. So like have something that nucleates a conversation, read it on the podcast, and then discuss or continue to research sort of in real time. The last note I had was like create some collaborative learning and or building project. So like have an idea, as if that's easy to do, and then figure out how to flush that idea out and turn it into something. That's probably the least immediately applicable, but I think maybe that could spin out of these other two things. Like maybe we get interested enough in something that we decide that we want to put some skin in the game or create something silly.
Yeah. So when you say explain a concept, how do you envision that happening? Like, would we both, let's say we're meeting on another Sunday, are we both coming with different topics that we explain to the other person, or is it a mutual topic that we both researched and we're going to have a conversation?
Yeah, I've considered both of these things and intentionally left it sort of open-ended because it may be that some topics are interesting and complex enough to spend an entire Sunday on or a few Sundays on. And in that case, we'd probably both want to do some amount of pre-research and come ready to discuss. But I think in the absence of that deep of a topic, it'd probably be just as effective if we both came with individual like tweet threads, for example, and soaked up half a podcast on each tweet thread or whatever.
Yeah.
So ideally, the first option. I mean, ideally, we have interesting enough topics that can sustain a whole conversation about one thing. I think that's fun, and you get into sort of deeper learning. The other thought that came to mind was like based on this Jeff Bezos concept you described, where it was like you start the meeting off with a memo. Essentially, everyone reads the memo. This is the concept. I actually saw, after you had told me about that, I saw a tweet which described this exact concept, which I appreciated.
Yeah.
Spend the first half or whatever, not even half, first little while of the podcast probably reading whatever the article or whatever is out loud to give context to the audio. And then after that, make commentary or something.
Yeah.
Push the idea forward.
I definitely think the idea of holding podcasts in that fashion where we're allocating some time for ourselves to make sure we've both spent some time researching before we talk about it is probably a good idea.
Yeah, as fun as it is to just off the cuff.
I think that meeting style is probably better for a lackadaisical podcast between friends. If we want to learn things from it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, and, we've sort of covered a few different strategies around the same basic principle, and maybe each of them fit in to any given Sunday, depending on how much stamina we have with this project.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that would be fun. I think Twitter and Substack make for great sources for discussion. More bookkeeping stuff is like desired length and frequency.
Yeah. Yeah, it seemed like you had some assumptions about length when you were discussing if the topic should be mutual at two different topics.
Mm-hmm.
As if there was like some need for us to meet like a duration requirement.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which, I don't know if that's how necessary that is. Like if we can, I think there are some topics that we'll be able to talk about a lot more and other topics that would be more of a shorter discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we'd have more than one of those if it's a less interesting topic.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think we need a duration per topic per se, but I think a duration per meeting, per like podcast is probably good, or at least a no shorter than X amount of minutes is probably appropriate, or else I could definitely see there being a Sunday where if one or both of us aren't feeling it, probably call it a day after 15 minutes and then just sort of scrap that whole day. I mean, I think my mind goes to an hour. Like a 1 hour conversation is a pretty easy bar to meet, I feel, for the most part. Yeah. As long as the content is interesting. Probably won't always be easy to fill an hour. Maybe. I could be wrong. Rogan does 3 on a weekly basis, right?
Yeah, he definitely...
It's also his whole job.
He's talking to a unique person every time.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good point.
It's less of a... Yeah, it turns into less of a interview of the person, more of a discussion with them. Like
getting to know a person.
Getting to know the person, yeah. Or here's a recent event that you have nothing to do with. Let's get your take on it because you happen to be on the podcast.
Yeah.
Tends to happen. So... I think sometimes filling an hour might be tricky, but I think we can fill that hour either by discussing or looking at things to get something to discuss, depending on the topic. However we want to approach that.
Yeah, I think that's good. Sounds like an hour is appropriate.
Yeah.
Okay. That's an easy box to check. And then the other one was frequency. Is this like a bi-weekly, monthly? Do we want to make it a... what kind of obligation is this? It's a fun project. There's something to be gained. It's like a dedicated learning session, essentially. Yeah. Which is motivating for me.
Yeah, I sort of imagine things are going to come up on weekends.
Yeah, exactly.
So it is Sunday. I don't know what we'd want to start off with in terms of cadence.
Yeah, I think my mind goes to monthly is like a low bar.
Yeah.
Or like an approachable bar, I would say.
If we're itching to throw in another episode for the listeners, then we can be a little earlier.
You gotta come over.
They'll be waiting with bated breath.
Dude, today would be one of those days, I feel, after what happened yesterday.
Yeah. Definitely when you said like come to the table with 3 topics to discuss or propose for a future iteration, like it feels tough not to talk about presidential candidate assassination attempt.
Yeah, definitely.
As one of the topics.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be 3 either. Just like it doesn't even have to be 1. I think if either one of us has like a concept that we're convinced is worth an hour of discussion, probably just let the other guy know I got this one. And if we come up short, we'll just hit Twitter and find something else to talk about.
Yeah, I suspect that. That's all Twitter is right now.
Yeah, good point.
But yeah, that's something I feel like we could talk about for a while. Yeah, definitely interested to pick your brain on it. But yeah, I think a good first step of understanding the podcast is understanding what a podcast is. Right.
Okay.
So let's think about
I like this.
Podcast. Podcast is a portmanteau.
Oh boy.
Which you'll like. A portmanteau is a French word, or it's derived from French, but people use it in the English language, which basically means it's a hodgepodge of 2 words: iPod and broadcast. And there's a lot of words in the English language that sort of follow that. I don't know, that pattern for the creation of a new word. This one, being iPod and broadcast. Portmanteau itself is a portmanteau. I think it's like porter or something in French is like a carrier, and manteau is like a cloak or something. And together, I think it means something like suitcase, which is kind of fun.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, we know where iPod is sort of derived from. It's just a product of Apple. I think there is some interpretation around what I is in iPod.
I think the original thing was like internet, right?
Yeah.
But that's definitely not what it means now.
Yeah.
Or it quickly lost that meaning, I think, even around the time of the iPod.
Yeah. It's either internet or, I don't know what it would be now.
Yeah. Well, now it means Apple.
Yeah, now it definitely means Apple. And broadcast is composed of 2 words as well. Broad and cast. Broad just coming from Older English meaning wide. And cast is stemming from an Old Norse word.
Okay.
It's the past participle of a word that used to basically mean to throw. At the time, it was meant to mean like throwing seeds, to spread seeds. And it was more of an agricultural term. So it's kind of fun that broadcast, that component of the podcast composition, used to come from agriculture, spreading the seed. So here we are.
Yeah, that's fun.
Spreading our seeds.
Well, yeah, we can put it that way.
Yeah.
It feels like what we're doing, based on the last 18 minutes of conversation, is sort of running against this definition. Because we have declared that this is for no audience other than ourselves, primarily.
That's a good point.
Which is not a very broad cast. This is a narrow cast.
Yeah, I don't know if we should call it a podcast.
That's a good point. I think that's a great point, actually. And then if we break down the portmanteau, the first half of it, the iPod portion, this is a non-internet connected audio recording software. This is all local.
Yep, and I think the pod portion of podcasts in iPod specifically is, or to say it another way, the act of recording oneself in an audio file existed before podcast was a term. Podcast became a term when you could download a recording to your iPod and listen to it. And it was like basically an easily accessible audio file is what would be deemed as a podcast. So yeah, I don't know what we want to call this. I just threw a wrench into the TB and JR pod. I mean, we are a pod.
It's a placeholder.
Yeah, this room acts as a pod. So maybe it's good that we we cut out the cast, whether or not you intended to do that.
We're the two cast members of this room.
Yeah.
Which is a pod. It's a podcast, but not in the classical sense.
Exactly.
It's two cast members in a small room. Yeah. And not a digitally accessible, broadcasting of ideas. Yeah. We can call it whatever we want.
Yeah, we're redefining the word. We've brought some ambiguity to what is podcast.
Yeah.
And that's fun.
That is fun, indeed. Yeah. That is also like a good, I think, anchor for what we're doing and how it's not what you might think when you think of a podcast at face value. We've got our own definition.
That's right.
It's a lowercase p podcast.
Yeah. So let me see. What was it that you had said? You said explaining a concept, reading, discussing an article or thread tweet, which is pretty similar to the first one, except we have like something that we're like both dedicated to read, as opposed to saying like both of us do our own research from wherever we want to look, whatever bias we want to find. I think both are valuable. Mm-hmm. Both are good approaches. And yeah, like you said, collaborative learning idea that will come.
Yeah, maybe that would be fun.
It would be pretty cool if something came up out of a discussion that we were to action.
Agree. I think that when I think of things we could feasibly build in 2024 in Silicon Valley, when I think of things that are bootstrapped together that two people have built in their spare time, it's almost always software driven. And you are the software expertise in this room. And so I would be worried that something that we wanted to build would essentially just be like a extra work on your plate if it were something tangible or a product. But in sort of thinking about how to get away from that idea, I think building something could be as easy as writing our own essay or article, sort of a declaration of opinion or a prediction of outcomes. I think that would be really interesting. And there's a lot to gain there as well. One of my personal learning goals lately has become like improve my confidence and efficiency as a writer. And this could be a decent outlet to do that. So maybe like eventually after we've done enough review of others' works, maybe one of us comes to the table with an essay or a short article that we've written privately. And that could be a discussion point. And then maybe eventually there's room to like co-author some greater essay. And then that becomes our more broadcast. Maybe we publish that somewhere. That could be a pretty interesting possibility. Just some initial thoughts. I've actually taken the like desire for improving my confidence and efficiency as a writer, and I've had Claude develop a little writing program for me. Not an actual program, just like a curriculum essentially to do on a weekly basis, which has been interesting. Sort of a fun test case for Claude because it's my first endeavor into Anthropic as opposed to OpenAI. And that's been interesting. It's been kind of fun. See if it works.
Do you have to pay for Claude? Is there a freemium?
It has a freemium version. It seems very similar to free GPT.
Yeah.
I don't think this is like the right context to try and compare Claude to GPT. Like, from what I've heard, it's more superior in like the coding sense.
Yeah, that's where it's crushing the game lately.
But it's doing a great job. It's like it's taken these prompts really well. It's been very similar from a user standpoint to GPT. colorful. The interface is a fun color, which I kind of like.
Interesting.
It's like clay red background. It's making its own imprint.
Yeah, you gotta differentiate somehow.
Exactly. You can't be another black text box.
Maybe you, depending on the prompt someone's asking, you select the color.
Yeah.
That'll be the feature that comes out soon.
I did like the little introduction to Claude. Was a little bit more fun than what I recall with OpenAI and ChatGPT. Because in Claude, it's like, give me your email, and then it asks you some questions. It's like, what's your name? Hi, I'm Claude. Nice to meet you, John. And then that sort of initiates your first conversation with Claude. Interesting. Which, semi-tangentially, is probably not a bad thing to do in one of our podcast episodes, is to declare ourselves.
Yeah, tell the people who we are.
Yeah. People. Yeah. Well, one of the ideas for the podcast was to train an AI, right? This is all source material for our future digital brains.
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe. That's a funny concept today, but maybe in 10 years it won't be.
Yeah, I'd like to think it will be able to pick out when I'm talking and when you're talking. Either that or we're going to create like a hodgepodge. A portmanteau of John and Dom.
Yeah, that would be the TV and JR.
Yeah.
That would be hilarious.
That's fun, yeah. I feel like I don't do too much writing at all. I mean, that's just not something I'll do in my career much outside of like emails, a design document or something like we want to build this feature. Let's define the reasons why we would want this, who wants this, how we'll do it, type of thing. Which I feel like is a specific type of writing.
It's technical.
It's not like, it's not necessarily creative, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I agree. I think it's similar in my work, even if I'm working on a manuscript, which I haven't done in some time. But it's all very technical writing. It's research oriented. There's very few areas for creativity. Of course, you can be creative in technical writing, but it's never about how you're expressing yourself. It's about how you're reporting on something. And I think that's the direction I want to grow in. It's like I want to be more confident in my opinions and be able to express them clearly. That is not something I get exposure to in my job either. So it could be fun. Maybe as a function of improving in our writing capacity, we just get better at Twitter, and that could be fun in and of itself. Become a more prolific Twitter or Substack author. Maybe not.
It hasn't crossed my mind to be more prolific on Twitter. Do you tweet currently?
No. And I think if I were to start, it would mostly be for career purposes, for networking. Like a lot of my favorite follows on Twitter are other scientists in the field, and they're mostly just sharing papers that they didn't work on. And in 280 characters, either saying, great work, here's a question, or wish they would have done this, here's a cool article.
Yeah.
Essentially just that.
Yeah. I would need to understand why I'd want to tweet. Like, why would I want to cast something out into the internet for somebody I don't know to see and interpret? It does seem like there's something worthwhile there. Like,
I think the practice of writing a clear opinion and then having enough confidence in that opinion to defend it publicly is admirable. I think it's also a little bit scary. But I think that people who are really good at expressing themselves probably feel comfortable and confident doing so. Rocco may have just made the podcast. There's a dog snoring.
He's not super enthused.
He hated that.
Yeah, I definitely saw some of that with the most recent trend in Twitter right now. One thing that comes to mind is I think it was some doctor in Times Square. She took a video after the assassination attempt and was like just doing like a 360 around her in Times Square, and like there's nothing that's showing any indication that there was an assassination attempt on the poised presidential candidate, which I think is something, she put out there, captioned it as such, just saying like why this is a bit of a problem that, this wouldn't be surfaced to people. I mean, a lot of what was being shown on the screens around her were ads of some sort.
Yeah.
But I do think, like you're saying, like building confidence in your opinions and broadcasting them is something that someone like her must have had to be like, this is something I'm going to capture because I think it's ridiculous. I'm going to put it out there, see what people think.
Just having that baseline comfort, saying like, my stance is this should be reported on in Times Square somewhere. This is big enough news, and it's not. And that's all the stance is. It's not politicized in any way other than being like, why aren't important public events being displayed as such?
Exactly.
But even that opinion, I think you have to be confident in defending.
Yeah.
But yeah.
If you've dabbled in the discourse, there's definitely people that are in disbelief that what happened was legitimate, even though there's people died.
Dude, yeah.
Multiple people.
Yeah, really gruesome.
So you got to really dig into conspiracy if you're thinking there's I don't know, something staged at play. So I don't think it's. I think it was a bold post at the time at which it was posted, because I saw it posted before there was much information about what happened, because it was pretty confusing at the beginning. I think when I dropped you off, I read the headline and I was basically saying what's this legitimate? And I was like, oh, what's going on here?
Here we go.
But you do have to sift through the content enough to get a good understanding of what went down.
For sure.
I feel she probably made her post during the period of ambiguity, which I think is bold in itself.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. I would love to have that level of courage, just online courage, to be exposing what seems like a legitimate issue, just to demonstrate that you believe it's a legitimate issue.
Yeah, I guess even to that point, regardless if it's staged or not, it does feel like breaking American news.
Yeah, absolutely.
Worthy enough to intercept something. I thought it was an interesting post, but I think it speaks to a little bit of what you were talking about. You can definitely, I think there is a part of building confidence in your opinions and writing style, whatever it be, that this could help with.
Yeah, agreed. And maybe the long-term vision there is something as simple as application of those writing skills, or that firmness in opinion to apply to your career or something like this. Maybe it doesn't even have to be a social outlet like commentary on Twitter or something like that, but it is a good battleground to kind of sharpen yourself against. I also think it could be pretty nice, and this doesn't have to be a Twitter thing. I think essays are probably better for this aspect, but to sort of live in a way where you have some recording of your own critical thinking. You have some written document you can refer to decades from now and say, with the benefit of hindsight, here's how this event played out. Here's how I envisioned what was going to happen at the time that it was happening. Or, apply that to a technology or anything like this. How was my reasoning then? How have I changed now? That could be pretty fascinating, honestly.
Yeah.
And that's applicable also to the AI personality training. Ideally, maybe a few generations down the line of AI personalities, it then begins to grasp your arc of opinion changes and continues to change you for you after you're back.
Yeah.
Which I hate to think about.
It understands your adaptability.
Yeah.
Your stubbornness, maybe.
Yeah, stubbornness. I hope there's some level of stubbornness. Yeah, that's fascinating. I had a couple other notes which were sillier. One I think could be fun, which is like dial a guest, sort of have a call-in guest or bring in someone and participate in the same way that we would do the content normally, which is like read an article or an essay aloud, and comment on it. I think there's a lot of really interesting minds in our lives, and adding them to the conversation would only be fun. And then the more silly, probably less realistic I thought was to say, like, maybe there's a situation where we take the podcast on the road and like we go do something with some microphones and we go attend some event and record a cast somewhere public. Yeah. I don't really know how that would work yet, but it could be
the mic quality might be worse if we don't want to bring the fancy mic, but
we'd need some equipment.
You can record yourself pretty easily on a phone. Like there's like a podcast recording.
AirPods.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah, that
could gotta get some fancy headphones or something. Did I tell you this week, some new guy that joined my team in the office came in with a pair of $2,000 headphones.
They make $2,000 headphones?
So I was like, he's taking them out of this massive case. I was like, look at those Bugattis. And he's like, yeah, they're really nice. And I was just like, but yeah, we asked him how much they cost, and you could tell he got like a little embarrassed saying the price because it was the price used as well.
Oh
and he was just like, yeah, you gotta listen to him and you'll understand. And he did let me try him.
Yeah.
It was he played a song by Tiesto. And it was like I was in a different universe.
Wow, it was.
I was like, okay, they're also massive. Like they take up your whole head.
It's a whole helmet. Yeah.
Yeah, it's legit. But if we get a couple of those, we probably have no problem taking this on the road.
Drop $4,000 on headphone helmets.
It was funny. He was like, yeah, we all have our own little things. I was like,
that's a nice hobby.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Like, dang.
I hope he's not just listening to Tiesto. I hope there's like...
Yeah, I mean, realistically, he's probably using it for meetings a lot of the time.
That sucks.
Yeah, I hear you so clearly. Nobody else can hear this person. I can.
Imagine wearing those headphones in a meeting and not paying attention.
Yeah, he seems like a quirky one.
I do know that field is deep, like audio quality, advanced audio engineering. That stuff is like a huge niche.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt the quality of sound I was getting out of it were better than Pixel Pro or AirPod Pros. But yeah, I mean, is it worth? I mean, maybe he's just absolutely zooted, and I don't know. But
he's microdosing
or something like he's just loaded out of his mind. But yeah, $2,000 on a headphone for me right now is a little too much. I feel like I could do something better with that.
That's a tough spend. Although I'll admit I'm looking to buy probably a MacBook Pro either early next year or by the end of this year. I think the new line's about to come out, right, with the M4 chips. And I really want to get into the Apple environment for a computer. Yeah. Love the Windows. I get a lot of Windows at work. I've got this computer we're recording on, which was built when I was playing video games more often. But I'm over it. I don't know. Yeah. Not a lot of benefits I'm seeing.
I like the idea of taking the podcast on the road.
Could be fun. Even if we just set up a table somewhere interesting. You know what would be hilarious? Well, this is actually probably a bad idea. But you ever heard of what's the name? There's like a Hill Jam. It's like the Dolores Hill Jam or something in San Francisco. It's an illegal event. I don't think I got the name right, but it's an illegal event that happens every year. It just happened like last week. And it's one of the steeper hills in the city, this gigantic hill, and hundreds of people show up and watch people skateboard down this hill and get absolutely clobbered.
Yeah.
It would be pretty silly to record a cast at this thing.
Yeah, we could find an event.
Maybe
like
not that one,
but yeah, either that or what was it? I think as Luke was describing it was like a Gloucester event or something they do now where they take a big long cantilever pole and wax it up with a bunch of fish sauce and have people try and run and grab a flag at the end.
I've seen videos of this.
Yeah,
that would be fun.
I think it's originally like a Portuguese thing, but there are a bunch of Portuguese in the North Shore, Massachusetts.
Greasing up the pole.
Yeah, but yeah, we could take it to an event of that nature.
I think that gives us a fun excuse to go to an event that we may not otherwise go to also.
Yeah, the sound quality at something like that is going to be atrocious.
Just got to figure out where to set up the table. Just like, or maybe not even have a table, but where we put the chairs.
Yeah, but it will get a fuller picture of the AI personality we're trying to capture.
Well, there will be commentary on the event, too. Yeah. There has to be. There's no way you can go and ignore it. It's got to be somehow a part of the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think if the pod is just discussing topics that we've researched exclusively, I'm going to sound like quite the intellectual.
Yeah.
Which is fine.
I'd say maybe I enjoy that piece, but on a per time basis, I'm probably a silly goofball much more often than an intellectual.
I'm sure we'll find a way to mix it into some serious topics.
Perfect. Yeah. Trump assassination one Sunday, skateboarding hill jam.
Yeah, the listeners they're gonna be ready for anything. Us too.
We could have done a Transavia podcast.
We could have.
That would have been funny.
Yeah, airplane podcast is definitely possible.
Oh,
record offline and
to a round trip on a Sunday.
Did you look out the window at all during your flight?
I was in the aisle row of the inner quad, so I didn't see any window.
Yeah, we saw some cool stuff, man.
Really?
Yeah, because we went across the Arctic Circle, and it was wild.
Really?
Yeah, it was super wild. And I don't know if your plane had this functionality. I hadn't seen this on a plane yet. It was pretty cool. It was a cam of what the plane seen, so you could see what was underneath the plane.
That's cool.
Even on the takeoff and landing, which was
that's true.
That was a new way to land. Let me tell you, it was like, oh, we are coming in. And I was like, I don't know if I like this.
Yeah.
It's kind of nice just getting the sudden jolt and then you're good.
We did it.
But yeah, I saw that in real time. It was kind of fun.
That would be fun.
So keep your eyes peeled for the option on a display for the flight cam.
That must have been an Airbus.
Probably. Yeah, it was a big plane.
Boeing is not shelling out for underplane cams.
Yeah, it was. I think. Yeah, it was 10 people per row, 4 in the middle, 3 on each side.
Whoa,
big plane.
Yeah, I think that's what I had too. The Frankfurt to SF flight. Yeah. Apparently, they got a really great view of Mount Rainier.
Yeah,
the pilot came on and announced that in 3 different languages. And I was like, right.
Damn.
Let me put my movie back on. I can't see out the window. Just, yeah. I would have loved to see that. I love that mountain. But it's all good. It was worth it. It was worth it not having a seatmate.
Yeah. We'll keep tab on our collaborative travel and think about where we can mix in the pod.
Yeah, agreed. One other aspect of the podcast, I almost want to call it something different since we have such a unique definition of what this is. We can fit it into podcasts, but we'll come back to that. Was the question of whether or not we want to have a video component.
Yeah.
While we're in this room, that's an easy box to check. There's a camera here. But abroad, that would require a little bit more thinking. And I also don't know how... I don't have a clear thought on whether or not adding video does much for us other than make the file size gigantic.
Yeah.
How much is it to have a server?
I mean, if we have a video, we can just store it on YouTube.
Oh, make it private.
Granted, if it's public, I think I imagine, I don't know if there's pricing involved for private stuff, but for public stuff, it's always free, right? And then you just have to make sure you can say certain things. Oh, well, that's only if they like demonetize you, which is not of concern.
Stay money free and hoping you don't.
Yeah, I don't know if we'll have the user base to generate something like that.
I doubt it.
But
it's not the goal of the pod.
It would be funny to see an ad run on video. What are we gonna throw on there?
They'd probably put some hair loss boner pill on. Hey, look at these two fucking nerds.
Well, for this episode now, probably.
The other question I answered, I think that's a fun idea, actually. Put it on YouTube. Could be interesting. And that solves the access issue also. That way either of us can review whenever. Software. Would need a new software for recording to add video and audio. The software I'm using for this is called Audacity. It's just a really old audio editing software that I think is available online. I've used this software a good amount. Back as far as my bodybuilding days. This is how I edited my routine song. I did a little, you gotta go out and flex with the song going on in the background when you're a bodybuilder. And I thought that was the bee's knees when I was 19, so I used this software to do that, and I've used it a few times since, but no video component as far as I'm aware on Audacity.
And what song were we listening to?
Turn the pose down.
Yeah.
Dirty Diana by Michael Jackson.
All right, I'm gonna have to refresh myself on that one, but
it's a hit. The Weeknd did a cover of it in 2012 or something. 2011. Okay. So it's a good song.
Yeah,
it's a funny song. I mean, that's on my permanent record.
Yeah,
that song.
It is. We'll hope to add a couple more things on this via this recording or whatever we're calling it.
Yeah, you got to be honest. I'm not going
to
withhold. Yeah. That was a silly thing to do.
Nice. That's another thing that I'd like to get out of this podcast is learn a bit more about John.
Hey,
the JR.
This is a two-way street. Yeah. There's a lot to discuss there. For video, I think Mac has the best softwares. I don't want to buy a MacBook Pro, like I said, until they release the next gen, the M4 chips. And I don't know if I'll get one of the next gen, but I'm sure the current gen will be a little cheaper. That works. I also think it's a little bit spendy, this software, the video editing software. I think it's like a few $100. What's it called? Do you remember? It's not Logic. Logic Pro is the audio software. Let me look.
Do you envision much editing?
Are you
trying to make like a polished recording?
I don't envision spending a lot of time working on production.
Yeah.
It would be interesting though. Yeah, maybe there's a free option.
Yeah, I mean there's definitely free options to record. I think even on your iPhone there's I forget what it's called. iMovie. You can even chop up bits like if we need to like cut out a section like you gotta go to the bathroom or something. Unless I make some great content while you're gone.
Breakthrough.
Yeah, there's definitely software to chop stuff up.
Cool. Yeah, that's a much better. I think that's a great thought. I don't know why I was like, we need to get the most professional software suite we can find.
Yeah. Do you want a video recording for the next session?
I think that's a fine goal. We can make that happen.
Okay.
That seems easy enough. So, all right. So we'll have some action items then. So we got to make a YouTube channel. Let's open up the GD. GDoc. Well, yeah, this is a good thing to do. And why does it call you Anonymous Raccoon in the Google Doc? What's it calling me?
You're JR.
What the fuck? I want a cool name.
Let's see. You said you want. I feel like I have a YouTube channel.
We gotta make a new one.
One exclusive to it. Yeah. Mine's full of CrossFit qualifier videos.
That's funny.
All right, make YouTube channel. Make new.
We should probably pick a firmer name.
Okay.
For the channel, we can spend however much time we have at the end of this episode doing that.
Yeah.
That seems like an easy thing to just commit to. YouTube channel, there's choose a video editing software or recording software.
Yeah.
Doesn't Windows have something to use this exact same setup?
I think on Mac it's QuickTime Player.
QuickTime Player. I think
like that's something I would use to record my screen. I think it could also record
Clipchamp. This is the new Windows.
Okay.
I think the new Windows software, because they used to have Windows Movie Maker, which I used in high school a couple times because I had to make a few music videos. Nice. Oh boy. Clipchamp, I think will do, but I can follow up on that. I don't need to verify that right now.
Yeah.
Although I'm gonna.
I mean, you can Google Meet. You can record a meeting.
Yeah, I bet Zoom would probably
pushes it right out to Google Drive.
Hanson's Park. Okay, and then the other sort of action items come to mind are, so just to inform, the first pop-up on the Clipchamp homepage is want to grow your YouTube channel? So it seems like this will work for our purposes if it's pushing that message. So I'll look into how to use that software. And then the other thing was like, for the next pod, the next episode, we got to come equipped with some discussion topics.
Yep. Probably we want to pick a topic.
Pick one topic.
For the next one.
Mm-hmm.
Then we can come equipped with things to propose.
Yeah, I like that. So maybe one idea would be pick a single topic. Each one of us brings in some number of unique articles that the other person may not have already seen, and then review and discuss. So single topic next pod. Make it as simple as possible.
Sure.
And then we don't need to like pre-read or align on the other person's stuff. We can just come and do it all on recording. Okay.
Sounds good to me.
Are there any topics that come to mind for you? Just sort of top of your head, anything you've thought about already?
Yeah, there's a couple. We could talk about congestion. Something I've been experiencing lately. My voice will probably sound better on the next pod, but I could use to learn more about why that's happening. What drives it? How we fix it? Some of the things that we do.
How can I possibly feel better?
Some of the things that we do to fix it. I think it would be interesting to me. I think that that's definitely me trying to pull some info out of you, but also I could learn a good amount in that area.
That would be a fun one.
I had also had the thought of just presidential assassination attempts.
That's a big one we're going to be hearing about a lot over the next 3 weeks.
Yeah.
I like that. There's a lot we can go into there because there's the current one and then there's all of them in history as well.
It's also very possible that there's an add-on. But yeah, those are a couple that I could see myself talking about.
Yep. Yeah, I think those are both real.
One is political driven. One is just, one idea I have for a podcast, which is sort of similar to what you've described some of the time here, is a podcast where they pick a topic and they both research it and explain it, but it can be literally any topic, like some commonplace topic that they're able to describe in greater detail, and you end up learning a bunch of stuff from it. So that's where the congestion idea comes from. Because I'm sure there's
a lot of.
I know what it is, but
you know how I feel.
I know there's more I could know about.
Yeah, same. I think that specific topic's a great launching point to learn a lot more about immunology in general, which is something I don't have a lot of experience with professionally. But something I'm interested in. Immunology is super complicated, at least to a guy with my background. So that could be fun.
Yep.
Most of the topics that I've thought about that would be fun to discuss are sort of tech oriented, of course. I mean, that seems like the biggest treasure trove of things to discuss. Yeah. Just because we're surrounded by it. We talk about it a lot as is. Yeah. But besides tech, and there's a whole bucket to pick from there. Besides tech, I think there are some psychology topics I'm interested in. Yep. I won't name one. I haven't thought about it enough to name one, but I think just broadly, the way people think interests me. Yeah. And maybe there's room for overlap with some of the more current events / political topics there to throw in some psychology aspects. And then the other thing is escaping me now. It'll come to me. I don't recall. It must not have been very captivating. Oh, yeah. So something I've been getting into a little bit more in my personal reading in the last year or so is like historical turning points in the context of warfare. Really, it's a very interesting thing. Yeah. I think that was spurred on by the Recipe for Armageddon podcast series or whatever you call that. Yeah. About World War I. And I think there's a lot more to think about in that realm from like a naval perspective. I think naval combat's super interesting. Very interested in the transition from the age of sail to like the era of submarines and modern naval combat. Yeah. I don't know if that's as good a content, but I think some personalities in that arena are very interesting. I think there have been some historical, combat figures, naval figures that are very captivating. Maybe there's pieces to learn from there.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about a topic of history.
Yeah,
I feel like when I listen to a podcast, sometimes it's there's a podcast or two that I listen to that are just sort of random topics that you'll learn more about. But there have been definitely some that I've listened to that are strictly history, and those are fun if you're interested in it at that time. But if we both agree on
I think that would be key for some of these more niche
Battle
things.
of the Bulge or whatever we're going to discuss.
Or maybe when we pick like an idea and say, what's the history of this idea or this product or something? Mm-hmm. Like, let's reach back and see where this originated from. Like, I liked the etymology of the word podcast.
Yeah.
Etymology.
Thank you. Entomology is the study of insects.
That'd be fun too. I like it.
It sounds almost more like it's the study of those Lord of the Rings entomology.
Yeah. That's another fun topic actually, spurred on by the Lord of the Rings comment. I'll tell you what hit my mind, and then maybe there's ways to apply this elsewhere. But I watched a brief video on someone who declared that Tolkien's reasoning for going into so much depth behind the Lord of the Rings world building and this universe creation was that he was essentially trying to backfill a mythology for his ancestry in the greater UK, because you don't really hear much about that. You get a lot of like Norse and Greek mythology, but that area doesn't really have its own history. Like you have like Excalibur and that story, which is sort of a medieval era, but nothing that dates really further back. And so I really like that thought of him trying to build that for his people and the people around him. That's I think really genius. So maybe just like origins of culture would be a way to put that more broadly. Origins of culture and how people consider that now.
Yeah, or even more specific, there's like concepts of mythological figures, like an ant. Like, where did that start?
Yeah.
Was that strictly a Lord of the Rings lore created thing, or did they pull that from somewhere else? Because nowadays, when you read sci-fi, like we're reusing stuff all the time, and in part because I think it's easier for readers to understand like what it is that we're describing. And I don't know, as a creator, you've been impressioned upon, and you might, probably be like, oh yeah, that would be cool to toss one of those suckers into my, mystical world, magical world would be. That could be fun as well.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot to talk about there. Yeah, there's so many branches from that conversation. That could be fun. All right, we've hit our hour mark for Ep1. The last thing that we could try to deliver on now is a name, figuring out a label, some sort of reference for the project.
Yeah, I think we need to do things. We need the name and next week's topic. We brainstormed a good amount of ideas there. I'm not sure how we come to one.
I think we got to go with assassination attempts, just because it's so hot right now. It's all we're going to hear about.
The problem with that one is, assuming we hit the links today, we'll be talking about that.
Well, yeah, but the conversation will develop, right? I think there will be much more that happens. And then I think what we'll need to do is just expect to reiterate what we discuss in private. Just to be like, you made a good point about X and Y while we were doing not podcast activity. Yeah. Let's talk about that again. That was interesting.
Sure. Yeah, I'm pretty interested in talking about that one.
Okay. So it's just going to be it's inescapable right now, and rightly so. And so
I think it's tough to in future sessions. I think it may be tough to pick a topic.
Mm-hmm. We could do a revisit too.
We could do like a bracket, but that's not fun live for
a bracket.
Like you put in topics and you select who you might take in a head-to-head. And then I don't know how we determine if we draw. I guess that's a problem with two people.
We've got two people plus all the AI tools online right now. We could set a tournament up and have it score the topics by some arbitrary metrics, and then just abide by whatever it comes up with.
Yeah, we'll cross that bridge in the next podcast.
I don't think we'll have to worry about that one for a while.
All right, so we'll do. So the topic for next podcast, to make it clear, is it limited to the most recent event or just assassination, like presidential assassination attempts over time? I feel like that's all the same bucket.
Exactly. Yeah.
If we want to delve in and relate it to something else, then so be it.
I agree. I think it's going to be impossible not to focus that around the recent, yesterday's events, but we'll definitely reach back into previous attempts and make comparisons there. I'm also really interested in trying to make some maybe broad predictions about the next few months or how this year plays out, and we can look into history and see how things played out for people that were shot at.
Yeah, I think there's some interesting what ifs
for sure
to be proposed.
Okay, that's a good note. That's a great note. That'll be a fun topic. That'll be maybe a sobering topic.
We'll see where we're at come the next pod.
Agreed.
on that
Yeah,
topic.
hopefully there's no more topics there, or no more news on this topic.
I think there'll be a good amount to talk about.
Okay. Need a name for the YouTube channel, for the home.
Okay, so name of the pod.
Just noting our next topic. Name of the pod. Okay, so I think we decided that our North Stars that we're seeking to learn, and sort of around learning, we want to improve our confidence and efficiency in both writing and generating and communicating opinions. Sort of.
Kuko's Company.
We haven't been to Kuko's in like 2 years.
Yeah, we'd be taken down.
Yeah, we can have some other business name. I like that this conversation is referenced in almost every book I've listened to or read about the creation of revolutionary companies. There's like weeks-long processes about what name they land on. And the one that comes to mind is Jim McKelvey's company Square. Because initially he wanted to call it Squirrel. And in his book, The Innovation Stack, he talks about literally just going through a dictionary, word by word. And he got all the way to S before he found Squirrel. I assume anyway. He could have just opened it up in the middle, but
yeah.
The reason I bring that up is a one-word name could be fun. That's also probably the simplest thing to do. And maybe it doesn't have to be related too directly to what we're trying to do. Maybe it's just something that sort of encompasses the spirit of the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, no better way to do it than to pump that into an AI and have it give us a word.
Yeah. Let's put the same, here, let's try something. Let's put the same prompt into GPT and Claude and see what either of them spit out.
Yeah.
All right. You do GPT, I'll do Claude since I've already got the app. We got to choose the prompt though. So let's say, do we want a single word name, or are we just going to leave it open-ended?
I was honestly thinking about just copying this document as a prompt.
I think I'll be able to predict what it tells us.
What?
It's just going to use the same words that we've used in the doc and make some Frankenstein of a name. But we'll see what they say. So I'm going to say, here are notes from a pseudo podcast under construction. And I'm going to say, generate 10 names for the podcast. One word names. Generate 10. I will say the user interface for Claude is a little more clunky. Generate 10 one-word names for the podcast. Copy, paste, send. Okay, it did better than I expected.
I got one, but I don't know if it'll be like an available YouTube channel. That's probably what. Promise. Mine was Insight.
Insight. Wow, that didn't make the top 10 list from Claude. That's interesting. So the 10 one-word names that Claude generated were, there's some interesting ones in here. The first, number 1 is Curiosity. 2 is Illuminate. There's Synapse. I'm not sure how to pronounce this word. Cogitate. That's a new one to me. I don't think I've heard that word. What's that mean? Cogitate.
I think it's like to stir things around.
There's Spectrum, Mosaic, Nexus, Prism, Catalyst, and Odyssey. This is the problem with generating 10 names, is you get the paradox of choice where you don't like any of them because you have so many.
Yeah. I got some similar ones when I asked for follow-ups.
Cogitate is to think deeply about something, meditate, or reflect. That's not bad.
He's an interesting fellow. We'll have him on.
That would be fun.
That would be nerve-wracking for me.
Really?
Yeah, probably.
He's a pretty stern guy.
Do you think if we called the channel Cogitators, that would be too, like, pompous?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, it's almost like calling it pontificate.
Yeah. So how did he go from squirrel to square?
I think it was part of his governing body. I think it was changed to be reflective of like to square up. I think it was initially squirrel like squirrel away, but then square like square up because you're paying people. But I don't recall. It's been a few years since I listened to that book. But I do like it being not super clear or descriptive of the goal of the thing. Like square isn't a huge jump to go from square to square up, but when you see square, you sort of have to put an identity behind that word. And you do that by using the product, which is like this little plastic square that you tap your credit card on.
Yeah.
All right, so let's...
What about Probecast?
Probecast. That's kind of fun, actually.
That's
fun.
That's what I just got back. Probecast.
Probe is interesting.
Yeah.
Probecast is funny.
I threw it in because I felt like that's a lot of what we're doing is probing.
Yeah.
Into different topics. But I said something similar to probe, and it gave me Probecast.
It's like, all right, asshole.
Which is pretty funny. I don't mind that.
I'm fine with that for now. Let me see if we can. Let me give one more or two more prompts to Claude.
I mean, if we were to become prolific enough, we might create a new portmanteau, man.
Oh my gosh!
How funny would that be? Is it a thing? It's already a podcast.
Well, of course it is.
Yeah, that was gonna happen.
I feel like unless we're like 2 or 3 degrees away from describing what we're doing, we'll probably be reusing something that's been used. Yeah, because people have done this. They've gone through the dictionary. Well, let's see. It's 2 people for the most part. Discussing 1 or 3 topics. 1 to 3 topics, probably. This isn't helping.
I mean, we could refer to an old an individual that's known for this type of work.
Like what? I kind of like the word Hark.
Okay.
I've heard it only in one instance, and that was in The Lighthouse when Willem Dafoe goes through his entire monologue about casting down his partner in the lighthouse. He says, "Hark, Trident, hark," and I think what that means, according to Google, is like listen. Hark being like listen. I'm about to declare something.
Okay.
And I also like that the usage for this word has been steadily declining since the 1800s. This is a very old word, so I don't think
it's a slightly recent uptick
with The Lighthouse. This movie.
That's fair.
I think what will happen, regardless of what we choose, is the word will lose its identity and it will adopt the identity of whatever this project becomes, and that's what you need. You need the word to sort of reference the project instead of trying to describe the project.
Yeah.
I don't know. You have thoughts?
I like Hark.
Hark. Okay. One word.
One word.
Okay. That's it. That'll that'll be it for now. We'll rename our Google document file.
No more TB and JR pod.
You look at it and put the date right before it. Actually, I think I did in the audio file.
I'm sure the audio file can be renamed.
Yeah, I can. All right, we're at hour 15. I think we've checked our boxes for the day.
Agreed.
Let's
done.
Should we have a sign off? We'll think about that in the future.
I mean, I've been Tom Burke with my co-host John Rogers.
Rogers.
Thanks for tuning in.
Perfect.